Have you found the courage to ask for the true value for your product or service? To price it according to what it is really, really worth for your customer? We've discussed this before, but most people don't. Probably because they're only too aware of what the cost plus figure would come out with. And maybe because they're a little bit scared of what they perceive the customer might be able to buy elsewhere. But this video, which is the final of the series, is all about working out that monetary value and helping you to find that courage to ask what you really should be asking in high-end niches. Okay, so just a reminder of a couple of categories to consider. Is this product or service that you're offering something that is very much a one-off for your customer? Something they will only want once, that's going to have special memories associated with it? Is it something that they're actually going to be able to use for a very long time? Even if it's something that maybe gets slightly downgraded over time. And when I'm videoing this at home, I'm looking at my iPad. Now, when I first bought it, some of the reasons I bought it was probably I was excited about the technology and what it would do and the possibility. But also, all my friends were getting iPads. I guess I didn't want to be the last one who missed out. Now that iPad is actually quite old, but it's changed very much in terms of how I use it. It's become the one that gets thrown into my handbag. It really doesn't matter. It travels with me. If something went wrong, it's not the end of the world. We've now got our new one at home that we use for stuff that's more sophisticated. So that's got a much longer life than one would ever have anticipated. Is your product or some service something that might get lots of admiration or attention from other people? Or something that you would end up using as a conversation piece? Only a few weeks ago, I bought a book about the strange subject of the magic of tidying up. Now, the value I got from that book was not just the contents, but actually I've applied it. The process was great. But it's also become a talking point in many conversations with friends. It might sound maybe a little bit of a boring thing to have a conversation about, but it sparked many a lively discussion. So it was certainly, the real value of that book was way above the £5 or £6 that I spent on it. So, to put this in practice, let's go back to my example of the wedding cake for my friend. Now, where we're really working out the value of the wedding, and then from that being able to work out a price category that would be reasonable to encapsulate the value of the cake. And if you remember, we had 3 categories in terms of understanding. We had wedding guests who were business contacts, we had wedding guests who were family, and we had wedding guests that were friends. We also had the fact that because this was the wedding of the family's only daughter, in many ways it was completely priceless. So we'll just deal with the hard, more tangible aspects. We'd worked out that for each of the business guests, it was very reasonable to assume that there was going to be at least an extra £5,000 of revenue in terms of business turnover coming to the business over the next year. And that was just 1 year's revenue. We're not accounting perhaps for 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 10, just being conservative on the 1 year's revenue. Now, let's be further conservative on that and say that rather than it being 150 wedding guests in this category, actually it's only half that, because that 150 is probably 75 business acquaintances and business colleagues, and 75 who are their friends, their partners, their spouses. we talked about family and family connections and the gift of the family to effectively a £50 nice dinner, an event and celebration, and we said we're about 100, I think, for each of the friends. We could of course split those into two and reckon again that there's the factor of people who are bringing a partner or a wife or a friend who isn't known to the family. Can leave them in and leave them out. For the purpose of this calculation, I've actually halved the business category, but I kept the other two the same. Now, when I do the multiplication, I've ended up with 75 people where the value for having them at the wedding, in terms of ongoing revenue next year, would come out at £375,000. The next two categories I haven't divided by two, but I've got a value of 3,750, which covers all the family guests, and £2,500 that covers the guests who are friends. Add all that up, I come up with a value of the wedding, taking aside all the emotional memory bit of it, but the value of the wedding, somewhere in the region of £381,000, slightly over. Yeah. Now, again, we were saying that we were looking at something that was good value for the customer, the user, the client, in this case my friend's dad, but also good value for me if I was the cake manufacturer, or in this context the wedding planner who was covering all the costs, the catering, the dress, the outfits for the family. We've come up to value £381,200. Now that's the maximum. So now we start to look at that in the context of making it more of a win-win, a bargain to both sides. The rule of thumb here is you either divide it by half, and that would be your maximum price, or you divide it by 5, and that's a fifth, and that would be your minimum price. So if we do the calculations on this one, it comes out at £189,350 if we're just asking for half, or it comes out at £75,740 if we use the rule of thumb of dividing by 5. Now obviously, let's take the divide by 5. This is really the worst case scenario. That's £75,740 value for the wedding. We take out the bride's dress, we take out some jewellery, we take out flowers, we take out makeup, we take out wedding outfits for the family, we take out all the catering. Even when we've done all that, it would be very reasonable to assume that there is a budget in there for £5,000 to £10,000 for the wedding cake. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what we're doing. And now it's your turn. So please take your calculations from last time. I'm going to give you a moment to do the multiplication and do the adding up, although I suspect some of you will have done this already. And then we're going to look at what the final figure comes out. Have you done the first adding up? I hope so. Or at least you're at a point where you'll be able to do that very easily when this video ends. So do either if you've added it up, use the actual figure, or if you haven't, do a very rough approximation and get that final figure. Okay, so now divide that final figure by 2. That's your maximum price using this method. So now the final calculation. Take that final figure and divide it by 5. Great. So that's basically the minimum price you should be asking using value-based pricing. Now, as this is the final video of the course, I'm just going to add in 1 or 2 final points that I think are worth considering at this point. In the unlikely and unfortunate event that you've done this value-based pricing model and you have come up with a final price which is less than the price when you calculated your first pricing model, which was cost plus, well done on doing the calculations, but the bad news is, of course, that you need to go back and rethink your basic business model, because you're going to end up in something where the only real sustainability of this business is going to be on how you can reduce your costs and your operating procedures internally, and that's probably going to require a fast growth business working with really efficient partners. It may be possible, but you're certainly setting yourself out in a much more challenging context. However, for the majority of you, I'm sure you've discovered that the value-based price is way, way, way more than you ever anticipated when you either did the cost plus version or the market pricing. You may feel that you are confident right now to go out and ask that value, and if so, I'm really pleased and really well done. That's a brilliant outcome. You may, however, still have some reservations, and if you do, I'd like to make a final suggestion as to how to use this value. And it's basically, you feed it into your next round of market research. But you do it using a very particular question. I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to give you a chance to write this one down. So, I'd ended up with a price, a value-based price of £10,000 for my very special wedding cake. Yeah? How I'd feed that into market research would be now to go out and do some additional market research around people who were seriously wealthy, who had fun with money, who liked earning money, who liked people and doing good things for people. And the question I would be going out and asking them is, under what conditions would you spend at least £10,000 on a special event cake? Now, here's the bit that I want you to write down. The core part of that question is following. Under what conditions would you? Have you got that down? Under what conditions would you? You can obviously use it in many different contexts, but in this one, where it's testing your value assumptions and establishing that there really is a niche, high-value market for your product or service, it's under what conditions would you pay this price for what it is that's worth it. It only remains for me to wish you the very best in your business together, and hopefully I may see you on another mini course soon.